This was asked earlier by Dee. She wants to know what your opinion on brain development in children with a primarily carnivore diet is like, and why schools push high carb foods. Do people really not know, or is it intentional to dummy down the kids?
You know, the teachers and the schools, I mean, at that level, they have no idea. So they just think this is what you're supposed to do. This is what the guidelines are. So yeah, this is great. And of course they wouldn't do that. Whoever they are, would never promote a diet that's bad for kids, because who would do that? Well, assholes and evil people will. And they do. The food companies know damn well that this stuff is really bad. It causes disease, causes metabolic dysfunction, causes harm. And they don't care. They're happy with that. Callie Means has been a whistleblower for the food industries, and I believe he's sort of shown what the pharmaceutical companies are up to as well. But he was saying that that all the food companies know that their processed foods cause harm, they cause metabolic distress, they cause dysfunction, and they cause disease, and they know that. And I know they know that because I've been in the board meetings with them while they talked about it. So they know, at least. The schools, once it gets down to that level, they're just worker bees at that point. They're just sort of doing what they're told, and they're just expecting that everybody above them is a benevolent angel and just wants the best for everybody. Maybe they just don't care to think about it or find out. As to brain development on carnivore, yeah, I think that's going to be number one, the best thing for kids and brain development. Think of it this way. Prior to agriculture, the adult male brain capacity was 11% larger than it was 10,000 years ago, directly after agriculture, and that's continued to today. So there's an 11% drop immediately that has persisted. In women, it's more pronounced. It's 17%. So the brain size dropped 17%, bam, 10,000 years ago, and that's persisted. So that's developmental. That can't really be anything else. You've affected the development of that child, and now that child could not develop to their genetic potential. So that's wrong. And just because, well, I'm smart and I grew up on it, good for you. You're not as smart as you would have been. You're not as tall as you would have been. Your brain isn't as developed as it would have been. It's not as large as it would have been. You are not the person you could have been. Maybe you're a very nice person, but you are not the person you would have been. I'm not the person I would have been, that I could have been, that I should have been. None of us are, unless we were actually raised by a wonderful set of parents that actually did carnivore before we were born, during, and after pregnancy. And that's happening now. There are more and more people doing that, and their kids are thriving, and their brains are much larger. They're off the percentile chart. And so why is that? Well, you're not eating. Well, first of all, you're just eating things that you're designed to eat, and your body's going to develop the way it's designed to develop. Pure and simple. You can stop right there. But if you want to know a bit more detail, kids are always in ketosis in infancy and in the womb. They're in ketosis. And when breastfeeding, they're in ketosis. And early on, they're in ketosis. Why is that? Because ketones cross the blood-brain. First of all, ketones are your brain's primary energy source for most of the cells in your brain. Some still run on glucose. Most run on ketones. And that's very important for the fuel and for the mitochondrial health of your brain and development of your brain. Secondly, ketones cross the blood-brain barrier and reconstitute into fatty acids, which are used as the building blocks for the physical structures of your brain. Your brain is made out of fat and cholesterol. This is something you have to have in abundance, or you will not grow your brain properly. And so this gives your brain the building blocks. And this is why kids need to be in ketosis, because they need ketones going into their brain so they can build fat. That's a major, major portion. So you keep stuffing in carbs and sugar, you are kicking them out of ketosis, you are suppressing their ketone levels, and you are suppressing their brain development. You're also blocking out necessary nutrients. Like you need meat, but you need that to be your sole diet, because if you eat other things, that's replacing the nutrients in the meat. So you're not getting as much meat, you're not eating as much meat, you're not getting as many nutrients, and you're getting other things that can be anti-nutrients. They can block tannins, can bind up proteins and other sorts of nutrients, and oxalates and phytates and so many other things will block and disrupt your body's ability to absorb and utilize different nutrients. You have protease inhibitors like in wheat and soy and many other things that stop you from absorbing amino acids. You're doing low fat diets, or your brain is made out of fat, your body is made out of fat and cholesterol. You need this stuff. And so you're really limiting yourself, and you're poisoning yourself. You're giving yourself direct toxins, neurotoxins. There are a lot of neurotoxins that plants develop to damage the brain, caffeine being one of them. That's a neurotoxin and an insecticide that was developed to fry the brains and nervous system of insects trying to eat those plants. So, there are so many things that we put in our body that really should never be there. And again, it just comes back to that sentinel point. If you eat what you're designed to eat, your body's going to work the way it's designed to work. And if you don't, it won't. So you need to find out what our bodies are designed for, what our species is designed for. And you look back at biology, look back at our historical past. The immutable law of biology is that of adaptation. What you have been adapting to the longest is what you're designed for. So we've been eating meat. We've been apex predators for over 2 million years. The definition of an apex predator is a carnivore. Apex predators eat other animals. That is a definition in terms. And we were eating meat a long time before that. We were apex predators for at least 2 million years. So we have been evolving and adapting to meat for millions of years. So we are designed for it. We are optimized for it. We've only started eating plants regularly very recently, and it caused a huge disruption in our health and development immediately, 10,000 years ago, which has persisted. And you look at native populations that go from their hunter-gatherer, mostly hunter past, like the Plains Indians in America, who in the 1800s were eating a bunch of bison, and they were the tallest population on Earth. That's a study that came out in 2001 showing that. And now that's very different. They're not as tall. They're suffering from serious chronic disease, obesity, diabetes, cancer, and all these sorts of things, which did not exist in their population to any great extent prior to the adoption of a Western diet. And they were called Western diseases back then. They're still called Western diseases when you're talking about the context of Native Americans. I was just reading a book on this, talking about the health and changes. Like, yeah, when they started westernizing, they started getting developed sort of structure, they start getting Western diseases and diseases of civilization and all these sorts of things. It was just like, this has been written about for literally like recently, going back centuries. And yet we're not putting it together that this comes about from eating this garbage food and not eating what we're supposed to eat and designed to eat, which is fatty meat. That's it.
Wow. Who, in your opinion, would benefit from reducing the population and the intelligence of the general population?
Oh, who would benefit from that? Oh gosh, I don't know. Any sort of psychopath. But I mean, there are a lot of people. You're never going to run shy of narcissists and megalomaniacs in the human race. And so there's always going to be someone that thinks they can do everything better, they can do everything right, or that they deserve everything and they should be running everything and they want to control people. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so when you start gaining power and getting more and more power, you want more. And so, that tends to be the way, especially, and, a good way to do that is through government. And as Thomas Jefferson said, the nature of the world is for government to grow and for liberty to yield. And so government is going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow because these are the aspirations and machinations of different sorts of power hungry maniacs. And people's liberty is going to go back and go back and go back and go back. And then we have our backs against the wall at this point. And now, because we have our backs against the wall, now people are saying, well, this hasn't worked. The American experiment has failed. And so now we need to go to, now we need to try something new and wonderful like global communism. And that's the WF sort of slogan. It's like, it's 2030, you own nothing and you love it. I mean, how much more like brainwashing propaganda can you get? Hey, you don't own anything and it's great. You love it. You're like, what the hell are you talking about? So if I don't own anything, who does? Oh, no one owns anything. Everything's no. Someone owns things. That's how the world works. So if I don't own anything, if you don't own anything, if everyone doesn't own anything, that means that very select few people own things. And so what does that mean? That means everyone's a slave. So you work, but your the product of your labor is not your own. That goes to someone else. You are given a place to live. You are given food. You are given just enough to keep you happy and to keep working like a busy little worker bee. But you're never going to rise up above that. You're always going to be where you are unless you have some sort of, political sort of connections. But that's really it. They're going to keep things to class. So they want to go back to aristocracy. They want to go back to oligarchy. They want to go back to this gentry class where like they're in charge, no one else is, and everyone else is living in serfdom. Well, we've done that for thousands of years, and it sucked, frankly. And we don't want to do that anymore. We've had a few bright spots of freedom and liberty for the common people, and that tends to get some sort of megalomaniac that wants to take control and take over, and they end up doing it. The democracies in ancient Greece lasted about 150 years generally. Democracies generally ended up in tyrannies and autocracies because once people figured out they could just vote themselves more money, they just, they never work again, and they just sort of vote. So that's why Rome started a republic, a representative republic, and that helped disseminate some of the power around, and it wasn't like a direct democracy. And that helped and that lasted hundreds of years, lasted longer than America has, and then, Caesar came in and said, yeah, we're going back to empires. And then people said, no, we're not going to do that. So they killed Caesar and then kept the empire. So I was like, well, you should have kept Caesar then, because he was actually doing a good job and you didn't like cast yourself into civil war. But then Rome lasted, another several centuries. And, and then you had America that popped up, and that sort of influenced other spheres, the Magna Carta and all these sorts of things, little spots here and there that sort of just gave people back their freedom and control. And then they just wash up again, So we're sort of looking at that right now. We're watching the door of freedom close on the end of that. And you look back and it's like, 1,000 years from now, it's like, oh yeah, there was this really good spot, worked really, really well. And then it, closed shut. And then it took however many hundreds of years for people to crawl their way out of slavery. That's what we're looking at right now. So there are a lot of people, there's going to be no shortage of people that are willing to enslave their fellow man and profit from their misery and suffering. I mean, you have the food companies doing it now. They know that this stuff causes disease, and they do it anyway to keep them addicted and keep them profitable. And then they also invest in the pharmaceutical companies, because they then sell them the diabetes medications and all the different sorts of meds to treat the different illnesses that they have. To me, that's malice aforethought. That this is causing harm. This is causing disease. This is killing people. And then you sell them the drugs that can help mitigate that. I mean, that shows what you're doing, it causes harm, and you're doing it on purpose so that you can profit off that. I mean, that's something that you should go to prison for. That's something you should probably be executed
Sounds like a legal
for.
case.
Well, it should be.
It does.
I mean, think about the cigarette companies. They spent decades denying that cigarettes caused harm or were addictive, and that they were going to court and they're saying, well, you have these studies and those studies. Then they say, oh, but our studies say this. Our studies show the exact opposite. So I mean, what can we do? Well, then they got those leaked boardroom meetings, the tobacco memos, showing that they damn well knew that this stuff caused disease, it caused harm, and of course it was addictive. And in fact, they were trying to target kids to get them addicted early, like any drug dealer, like any cartel. They want to addict kids early so that they can have, an addict for life. Really disgusting human beings, and so they knew they got done for perjury and all this sort of stuff. But what they didn't get done for, and they got fined for $400 billion, I think the settlement was. And then the government just took that and, wasted it. And they had some other payouts and things like that. But, what they didn't do is they didn't arrest these people and say, hey, you are intentionally poisoning people. And you knew it was causing cancer. You knew it was causing emphysema. You knew it was causing death. And yet you did it knowing that it was doing that. Like, they caused the deaths of tens of millions of people and destroyed the health of probably billions. Why the hell don't they go to jail? Why don't they face a firing squad? I mean, they should. I mean, it's I think honestly, we live in a darker time now that we've gotten rid of public executions for shit like this. I mean, I really do. It used to be that people that committed treason and sold out the safety of hundreds of millions of Americans died. And then you had people selling us out, selling secrets, leaking the nuclear weapon technology to the Soviets because they felt that the Soviets should win and they're better and that communism is so good. You need to die. You potentially cause the death of millions and millions of Americans if those nukes ever hit our soil. Why would you ever bat an eye about executing someone like this? Well, if you can execute someone like that, why aren't you executing someone who is knowingly causing the death and harm to tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions of people around the world? Someone who goes around and poisons a well just for the sake of poisoning people, they die. They were lynched, they were hung. Like, how is this any different? This is causing harm. And unlike the well poisoner, it's just this random act of evil. I mean, you're selling them the poisoned well water, knowing that it's going to kill them. That's just sick.
Yeah,
these are
profiting.
sick people. Yeah, and so the food companies are doing this now. The pharmaceuticals companies are not much better. I mean, they're likely in bed with the food companies, and whether they know what's happening, I don't know. But if they do know, then I think that would amount to a criminal act. But what they do say and have said is that it's not really a good business model to cure diseases. The better business model is to find something that they can paper over and band-aid different symptoms so they can have them, again, addict them for life. So you get put on people on blood pressure medication since they're 30 and you got them for the rest of their life. Or you get people on different medications. They get diabetes when they're 10. Awesome. They're on these medications for the rest of their life. So I think it was Kelly Means. It might have been someone else who said that they heard a pharmaceutical executive saying once, asked a question saying, do you know what my favorite medication that our company makes is? And like, oh, well, what's that? You're curing cancer in kids, something noble. No, my favorite medication that our company makes are any medication that causes side effects that we have medications that treat. Okay. These are sick people. They're saying they want you to suffer so that they can sell you more drugs. That's disgusting to me. And these people are disgusting. They should be criminally prosecuted if they can prove that this was, if this was done knowingly. It's never going to happen. If you're not going to do it to the tobacco companies, I mean, who the hell are you going to do it to?
I'm with you. I totally agree with you. Malice equals murder.